lot of support and awesome, go you. It's just that makes me feel really warm at heart to see that.
It does. I mean, it's a lot kinder than get the hell out of the way or something like that, which, given the heart rates could be an option for some of them. But I think you're right. It does go to show that it's serious business and they're racing hard, but there's quite a lot of etiquette that goes into this. Now, this is not going as smoothly, I think, as they want. And look how polite that is. Sorry, ladies, you must drop. Can I say that if we were watching the blokes, I think that would more say like get out of the way. There's
Yeah.
very polite that goes on there, but they do. So they do need to kind of get out of the way and let the AHDRL team through. And our queen bee there, who's kind of up there, and we see that comment from Carla Joy trying to. So there's a bit of in-game that we need to consider where there is pretty sticky draft. And so even if they want to get out of the way, they can't just stop pedaling because then they jettison backwards. So I think they've done a pretty good job there. Everybody's pretty polite. They're on their way. As the season gets on, that might get a bit smoother.
Yeah, and it's as we're talking about the politeness here, we'll just take a total switch and go have a look at the men's A division and see what's happening there. Any feistiness, I know usually DPAC and ZWC have a few things to say, but we're dropping in with PNX, 4 riders, unfortunately. So they're at their minimum group. They can't drop anybody now for the rest of the race. So a little bit disappointing to only start with the 4. They might have had a technical malfunction, but looking pretty, I'm not going to say good, like okay. Definitely need to get their formation sorted as we see one rider dropping back and looking like they might have just heard that and dropping back and trying to get back in that straight line.
Yeah, so they do start with more than 4. They need 4 to cross the line. So when they're down to 4 after 6.4 kilometres, it depends how many we're actually able to start, but it's possibly not the most advantageous position to be in for them. But in saying that, again, I'm liking the form. I'm liking the fact that they're obviously keeping the pace going. Those small gaps, again, don't worry me at all because it indicates that they're moving pretty well. And they are rolling pretty well as well. So it looks to me like they've gotten themselves quite organised amongst the 4, which with only 4 riders, they will need that.
Yeah, exactly. I'm just watching Clues Proctor here drop back. Unfortunately, he's not really following the sink and sprint strategy very well. And we talked about sticky draft. That is really important when you're dropping off your lead. If you've just been leading, if you don't drop massively, almost freewheel and then sprint back on, you just drag everyone back with you and gaps start to form. The group gets confused. And that's what we saw there. Instead of dropping right to the back, he's stuck on to the second rider in line. The 4th rider then had to kind of get somewhat in the right place, and yeah, just got a little bit messy as we look at C. Stefanelli. Haven't heard of this team before. 5 riders here looking like a little motley crew.
Yeah, look, I'm not sure that the fashion police need to be dispatched on this one. I think they know their crimes against fashion. Sickly Stefanelli, it's an all-Italian team. I mean, they're following in the footsteps of Mario Cipollini. They're making themselves seen. It looks like Marco Pantani on the back there in the all-pink kit there. But they're moving pretty quickly. That speed is quite high. The heart rate from Dita Lisi, we can see the mid-160s. That's fairly comfortable. If it's still around the 160 mark, after about 15 kilometres, we'd probably say they need to push it a little bit harder. But pacing is a very big thing in a team's time trial. Only 8 kilometres into 24. This is the time where you break it down, don't you, Anna? You don't just get on the start line and say, okay, 24K to go now. You break it down into digestible pieces and just tick one off at a time.
Yeah, this course you really need to save yourself for the last part where it starts going up and down, because if you destroy yourself now, those up and downs feel like mountains rather than rollers. So these guys, you've got to keep it a little bit in check, but you've also got to have a good sort of dose of momentum, and the teams that really know how to pace will know how to do this. Sometimes even having your strongest riders just take shorter turns or turns not, at their higher power means they can save a bit in the tank. And, I like what you said before, Katie, about on the parts of the course where it's very twisty, turning up and down, just put your strongest rider on the front. I like that. And I think teams that can maybe save that rider a little bit now and then use them later potentially could make a lot of gains in that back half.
Well, we're looking at Gary Hayden now from the Aero Masters, and if somebody watching knows these crew, can somebody tell me if Luke McKenzie is legend triathlete Luke McKenzie of the same name? It's happened a couple of times where we've seen the name and it's turned out to not be the person we think. But if it is that Luke McKenzie, well, then they're onto a good thing having him along. There he is, number 5. So we can see they've got the numbers before their name. So that is their order. In saying that, if we look to the right of screen, it goes 1, 6, 3, 4. So I'm not sure that it ends up being as helpful as they intended it to be, but I think that's the thought behind it.
Yeah, so we decided to use that once in a race, and I can see why theoretically it works, but what happened to us was one of our riders had a tech issue off the start line, so suddenly the numbers were almost meaningless and more confusing. So perhaps that's what happened with that team. As we look at the pioneers here, looks like there are actually maybe 2 teams coming through here. So yeah, we have looks like the WTRL is in the yellow and the pioneers are the sort of nondescript team. Oh, they are the same team actually. So the WTRL pioneers here. So sorry about that, but they were just getting a little bit confused within their own group. It looks like they've just dropped someone potentially off the back of their group. It's got Aero behind their name, but I don't see any Aero. So looks like he's just dropped from his team who are further up the road. So a lot happening in this men's A category as they're rounding out up to the 10-kilometre mark.
So the Pioneers look to be making some pretty solid ground. They're only about 10 seconds, 8 to 10 seconds behind the Aero Masters now. So we did see Craig Eastwood get a little bit caught up in there. I think a bit of confusion because their kits are different. Come on, guys. We need you to be in the same kit. I mean, that's, just a slight commentator's request there. But for the most part, they're actually looking pretty smooth. Even if they are in divergent kit choices here. And I think that their pace is remaining fairly high, given they are kicking up slightly. So probably the biggest test through this section is to maintain a fairly even power profile, whatever the speed may be, to make sure you don't break any legs. In that way, this part of the section is actually pretty dangerous because if you hurt too much in this section, once they speed it up again toward the end, you'll just have nothing left.
Yeah, I do want the people who are watching to remember what these groups look like and then wait when we see DPAC and Team ZWC out, because they will look very, very different. It will be straight line formation. I know ZWC, they all rock the Aero helmets. It's full noise, and ZWC is actually one of the most competitive TTT teams, Prem and Community. I know they were kind of podium in positioning based on their times last series, so it'd be good to see when they're out on course, just the difference here between some of these say lower ranked A groups that aren't quite getting the sort of rhythm right compared to those who are the masters.
And we do have 2 divisions this season in the APAC A's and B's, and that is because we've tried to keep it so that there's not more than 15 teams per division, just to make the racing fair and equal. And so we've actually had to go across a couple of divisions there. So we'll jump over and take a look at Division 2, and that is also the A-grade teams. But we've just had to split them across different categories there. We have a few riders getting dropped. Piper there, he is getting absorbed by this crew. But let's jump over to the Division 2A. And Oral 7 we're looking at here, Partridge Madsen. They're down to 4 again, Anna. We keep seeing this. They're only 9 kilometres in to 24. This seems to be a bit of a constant today.
Yeah, there's a lot of teams who are jettisoning riders off early, or they just don't start with enough riders. So unfortunately, it makes the day really, really hard. because you've just you can't strategically drop anybody, so you can't sort of have someone do a lot of work up front and then just drop them once you hit the hills. Everyone's got to work the entire way through, and if you've got a rider who's just a little bit slower, you're only as fast as your weakest link in this situation.
Well, isn't that a funny term, strategically drop riders? When you're the one being strategically dropped, it seems rather brutal, but it is a real thing because sometimes the best way you can contribute to your team is by really focusing on the first half of a team's time trial, for example, doing some longer, harder turns, and then kind of getting out of their way and letting them finish off with some style. But they do need to make sure that all four of them stay pretty close and look after each other. Otherwise, the back half of this, it'll be pretty messy. I mean, teams' time trials, it's fair to say they're not really delightful events, are they? They're pretty painful.
Yeah, I mean that's why I don't really do them anymore, and I DS. I did them last season.
You strategically dropped yourself, did you?
I strategically dropped myself. I said I had more value talking than puffing. So maybe it was just that I don't like the pain anymore, and I've got PTSD from time trialing from my triathlon days. So yeah, it's not fun. I think there's a different element because you're in a team. You don't want to be the one letting anyone down. You want to make sure you're performing the best. So you just end up pushing way harder than you potentially would even on your own. So yeah, they're not pleasant experiences, that's for sure.
No, and I think that the mindset is very different going into teams' time trials versus individual time trials as well. It's intimidating being the weakest link, but in saying that, sometimes the strongest link can actually do more damage than good if they kind of don't use their powers wisely.
Yeah, I call that kind of the hero complex. So it's the one who just launches themselves off the front to be like, look how many watts I can hold, everyone, this is amazing. And then turns around and then, the rest of the team's 5 seconds back. So I haven't seen too many sort of hero performances in the racing thus far, but you could definitely see when it happens and you just sort of think, oh, come on, pull back those watts a little bit, let the team stay on your wheel.
So we're looking at Peter Z here. The team, how many have they got there? Have they got 4 as well? Oh no, 6. Okay, that's good. That kind of gives me a bit of relief, actually. I feel like we've seen far too many teams of 4 today than we would usually like. We've got Canyu Baroka there, who we are watching, and I love the aerial views. The game is just rendered so beautifully. I mean, looks like the helicopter just ran into the tree there, but it's the game is rendered beautifully. And Anna, I think it offers sometimes a little bit of distraction from the pain in your legs because you really can get very absorbed with everything going on screen.
You can, especially when you go through those areas with the sunflowers and then the beautiful lavender fields and then the balloons that are floating around the place. I'm sure these guys are really looking at all that scenery, Kate. You'll have to check it on them afterwards and see what they thought of it.
Yeah, I'm sure they are too.
We talked there before about strategically dropping a rider. I do just want to, look ahead to the future, just somewhat, in that the next 2 races after this are scratch races, but then after that, the next team time trial is on a course that I just think will be extremely hard to figure out how to ride it well as a team. It's at the Mighty Metropolitan course around New York, and you go up the New York KOM. That climb is horrifically hard, 8 to 10%, very tricky even just to do it in a scratch race. So I'm very intrigued to see what those riders are going to look like when they tackle a course like that isn't quite as flat. And that's where they're going to have to think about strategically dropping people up climbs like that.
And I do think it's rather kind of the folks at WTRL, thank you, crew, for kind of giving them an easy start with this team time trial, because it is good to learn the craft on the flatter course. We're watching Milburn from race 3R on the left of screen there. Look at that power, Anna. That's pretty solid. He's on the front to be putting out that kind of power, but that is not something that you can maintain for too long. Kovacic, he is now pushing through for them. They're clipping along pretty well. So they're about to go over the aqueduct here. Look, it's not a big climb, and this is Div 1 for the men's A. That we were just watching Div 2. This is back to Div 1, but still the A's. This isn't really a climb, is it, Anna? I mean, it's a KOM, but the profile isn't too nasty at all. I think all in all, we can still call this a flat course.
Yeah, you pretty much can, just from the rollers at the end, I'd say it's flat to rolling. That KOM, yeah, it's more of a sprint. It is a tricky part. So you see here the group, it's been led very well here though, by Kovacic, very well, that he took the lead there, pushed the power, and they've really lost not a lot of momentum. You see a few teams lose momentum there because either they've pushed too hard up the KOM, or they kind of cruise a bit too much on the downhill and suddenly all momentum's lost. So they've done that very well. And they're actually talking on screen. So he's saying off, so he's had his turn and he's moving to the back. Not sure if maybe they don't have Discord working or maybe they don't all speak the same language. But never ideal to be writing it up on screen. Just, takes that extra bit of effort with sweaty hands to try and make your phone work. But perhaps, like we have learned before, not all teams all speak the same language.
It was something we found out in season 1. It looks to me like Wes have just done a catch, but we will wait and see, because it may be that they are about to be overtaken here. So let's just see how this plays out. But for now, Wes aren't looking too bad. They're a little bit too blobbed at the back. That's a mountain bike? Okay, I'm going to put it out there, Anna. That's definitely not the fastest choice of bike, even with an aero helmet.
That is definitely not. Sometimes there are little quirks in the game where if you've been riding that bike at some point in your warm-up, you'll get put on it. I think it should be okay, but yeah, definitely don't pick the mountain bike for a team time trial. So it might just be what we're seeing. I am having a look at what our audience is seeing, and it looks like he has picked a nice disc wheel fast setup. So that's good to see that there isn't a mountain bike out there on course. So good news for the World Elite Zwifters, who actually have a lot of fans out there. I know Ryan Devlin has been messaging, just saying that they want to try and win today, but DPAC are pretty dominant.
Well, the team that I can't wait to see out on course is Beast Mode. Now, we saw them for the first time last week, and they are, of course, led by a world champion team director, a German team they are. So the Beast Mode crew, I just get a feeling that they will be pretty solid when it comes to team time trialing, not only because they all have excellent power numbers, and actually if you jump into Zwift Power, it's a great way to follow along the racing, to jump into Zwift Power. Beast Mode are all red, so they're all pushing over that 5 watts per kilo. So look, I think that they might be someone that DPAC will definitely have to look out for as well. They're kind of new players. That's something that's great about the first couple of weeks of the community leagues, is you have some new teams come along, and all of the riders are learning what the teams are made of. And so the first couple of weeks often look a little bit different than the last couple.
Yeah, I think so, and I am definitely noticing, I'd say a theme for tonight is new teams out there, because they haven't quite got the sort of technique nailed, but I think by the time we see the next one, although the next one, like I said, is on a really, really tricky course, so I think maybe they're not really going to nail it until the last team time trial. What are your thoughts? How do you ride a team time trial when you're hitting really, really big climbs?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's about consistency. And what I'm always saying to my community riders on bunch rides is, whether you're on the flat, when we hit the climb, you feel like you're going slower, but you're actually putting out more power. So you actually need to watch your power quite carefully and try and keep an equal power profile. It takes a bit of time to learn that skill and to even understand how that feels, because putting out 300 watts on the flat versus on a climb feels quite different on the legs. and often
Mm.
your heart rate in particular will feel quite different, and your cadence will as well. So in many ways, I think it's a exercise in self-control, and that's where heading out for some training rides and some training runs can go a long way, because everybody, instead of even focusing on the screen and on the other riders, if you just focus on your power, see what happens, and kind of break it down into one element at a time, a lot of these teams will actually be using the racing to learn the craft of racing, and that's totally fine as well. We know that they're all multitaskers. We know that there's not a lot of available time to necessarily head out and do all of these training runs as well. And that's why I really love watching the team's time trials at the back end of these seasons, because I think that that's when it kind of comes all together for them.
Yeah, I can see ZWC is just catching up to Z Sun here, so we might even see them at some point just rounding that corner. These guys are now going past that lavender field, coming into, I believe, nearing the balloon sprint, and this is a very, very hard, brutal part of the course, and you've got what, like 5-6K to go, but it's not easy. And we're just seeing ZWC here, and this is a team I mentioned earlier who have really got this nailed very, very well. So they've got, a lot of them are riding the aero helmets. They've got the very quick bike setups. You can just see from that aerial shot, perfect single line formation. If you look at the numbers on the right hand side, this is where a team's doing really well. So you can see a lead rider there. When he drops off, you'll see he'll drop off to very, very low watts and then put in a big sort of sprint to catch back on. Those numbers might even go orange. And that's where they've really dialed in how to do this race properly.
Well, and I want them to dial it in a little bit further, because Team ZWC is the kind of team we can see not only step up to Premier League, but actually be very competitive in there. And the Japanese team were very impressive last season. And again, that looks like they've turned up very serious and ready to race this season. But what I want to see, Anna, is I don't want to see them dipping into that orange. What I want them to do is drop down to pretty low watts and get a little bit of rest on their legs, but ease it up a little bit more to make sure that they get on without having to have that differential. Because I cringe when I see going from very little watts to going to orange, because some riders will be able to do that 100 times within a race and it not
Oh,
damage them. But for most riders, that will really hurt their legs. So we're seeing Evo on the overtake here. This is a big deal.
yeah.
We were just talking up ZWC because they are a big force in this community league. But Evo, they are having a ride of their lifetime here. They are not just overtaking, but really easily coming up with 6 kilometres left to go.
Amazing. And they've got a fan here, Russell Cripps, who's saying, come on, Evo, and agree. These guys are doing great. This is, I've seen 45, 46K now. They're up to the rolling part, so it's very hard. And they've got beast mode on their tail. So beast mode, 12 seconds behind Evo and catching. Evo about to make the pass on ZWC. You can just see that coming up now. And this is going to be interesting to see how they do this. They should all start pushing up their power, go through ZWC with momentum. ZWC is not going to be happy at this situation. A dominant team who is now getting passed on the road, that is never, ever good for morale.
Well, I think it can be quite rattling too. But look at this, because we're looking at Z Sun. Behind them, we're seeing ZWC. Making the catch on there, we're seeing Evo. And we know that Beast Mode aren't too far behind that again. So this just kind of goes to show how hard they're racing. Beast Mode, I said, Anna, that I was really looking out for these guys. They look very, very good out on course. I would note that they've dialed their kit down. They're looking great in resplendent in their orange tonight. I think they were taking your fashion advice, perhaps.
Yeah, they have been grilling me a little bit on Twitter, as they have to you as well, Katie, about their choice of orange. It's not my favorite color, but I'm not saying they don't look good in it. I'm just saying it's not my personal favorite color, but they are looking good right now. And I did just see they've got 2 professional cyclists in their team. Hats there. riding just off the front now, and also Heidemann, who performed very well in the last scratch race. So these guys, they're coming with their A game for sure, and I think this is a clear indication they're wanting to push up to the Prem division.
Well, their 20-minute powers are, really world level. I mean, I just looking at this crew, I think it's the kind of team that can step up to Prem League and make a really big impact. They do have some real expertise in that race car. They won the World Championships. Of course, with Jason Osborne, I think that they are a crew that is definitely to be a little bit feared. They need to make sure that they don't let their watts go ahead of their strategy and make sure that they do stay in good form, because again, this is a bit of a learning experience. I think what they've shown us so far today is that they've got very good legs, but we need to make sure that they're dialing their strategy as well. Deepak, we're watching
Oh,
Firminger here. We know Deepak's going to be a force to be reckoned with. Can they match
unreal. Look at that.
Beast Mode tonight?
Oh, yeah. I think these guys are pulling in massive time on beast mode ahead. Already, I've seen that drop from around 26 to 24 seconds. And these guys are looking strong. Deepak Lindsay out in front, one of my favorites actually. He's had a great race series, both in Series 1 and the scratch race last week, and leading out for his team here. Just got to be a little bit careful he doesn't explode the team behind him. But these guys have really nailed that formation. And like I said, one of the teams to watch. They're just poetry in motion.
Well, we're allowed to be a bit parochial here, and Sam Lindsay, he's a Kiwi, so it's okay for you to sing the national anthem whenever he gets on the front. But he has proven to be one of the stronger riders. Last season, he was really impressive. Particularly, I remember his performance in New York. That was really standout, and that's when he put his hand up and sort of said, I'm here. I'm not here to play. I'm here to race. And I think he's gone from strength to strength from there. But you're right, he does have a big advantage. Putting out 7 watts per kg there, he needs to make sure that he keeps everybody with him and takes them all for the ride. But for the most part, they are closing in only 25 seconds behind Beast Mode now. We were singing the praises of Beast Mode, how smooth they were, and definitely how strong they are on paper. But I think between Deepak and Beast Mode, this series is going to get very interesting.
Yeah, I think this is from what I'm seeing already. It's the DPAC Beast Mode ZWC Evo show in this team time trial. They look so good out on the bikes, and they all seem pretty close. It'd be good when we see the final standings at the end, just how close they've been, because they kind of go by a feel. I do like what Deepak is doing here, having Lindsay lead the front during this hard section of the course. You can see in the gradients in the top right, it's just like -3, -2, +2, +3, +4. It's just always moving up and down and turning all the corners. You can see it's so easy just to drop riders. They've got a little bit of a gap there behind that third rider. So just so hard, technically hard to stay together in this part of the course.
So the women have finished now. We'll get the results a little bit later for that. But the fastest time there was 37 minutes and 46 seconds. That's moving pretty quickly for 24K. So some great racing happening there from the women. We knew it was going to be a fast course, and it's very much playing out this way. Beast Mode, they're looking pretty smooth. It's a bit tough through this section, isn't it? We talked about this earlier, these twists and bends, plus they've got 2 teams that they're about to overtake. It will be really critical that they overtake very cleanly here, and there's a lot of etiquette that's going to go into this.
Yeah, I was just looking at the time. I just noticed that Beast Mode is all from Germany, so I was just having a look at the time in Germany. 10:30 in the morning. So sort of gentleman's hours for Beast Mode. Just thinking they've managed to get up, probably have a leisurely breakfast, put in a bit of warm up, and come out here and hit this hard. So it's always kind of interesting sometimes to see the time zones. I know some race at about 2 in the morning, but yeah, no, 10:30 is quite leisurely. Good way to start the day.
Yeah, it's kind of pro hours. And they've certainly turned up with their pro team. Now, this is where it gets interesting. They need to really just hit the accelerator here to make sure they get past ZWC quite clean. We do need to watch right of screen because we might see some messages popping up saying, please get out of the way. Let's see if they're as polite as the ladies were. A bit of an indicator as well is the map top right of screen with all the red dots. And we can see that there's a lot of riders being dropped on their own there. And a lot of teams. So this isn't too bad. We've got 4 that have made a fairly clean move through the first section, but this is starting to get a little bit messy. Thank you very much to Beast Mode for all being in that same kit because it makes them easy, and also Evo for wearing that lovely magenta kit because it helps us pick out who is who. There's now 3 teams here, ZWC, Evo, and Beast Mode, that are all getting caught up together. So this is a little bit messy, but they're doing as good a job as I think they can.
And they're just about to cross the finish line. So I think we probably haven't seen too much chat because they're like, oh, you know, we're 200 meters from the end. So we'll just see Beast Mode pretty much cross the finish line about now. Just coming through some dropped, straggled riders. But that was good work from Beast Mode. That looks like they finished with 5 riders and finished very strong. So that's going to be interesting to see Beast Mode versus DPAC as to who is a faster team out there. I think those were the 2 that are definitely top of this ACAT.
So good job from them. It's been, again, I think it's going to be a cracking season. If it's so competitive in a team's time trial, let's wait and see what happens. Now let's take a look here at the BCAT Div 2. Again, like Div A, they are separated across 2 divisions because of the sheer number of teams, which is pretty cool. 1,475 teams entered across all the divisions.
Oof.
And all the different geographies, Anna. So it's been a pretty incredible turnout for season 2.
Yeah, that's unreal. Just amazing. I just love it. Awesome to see so many people taking to this format of racing, the team time trialing, and then the, you know, what I would say are pretty hard scratch races. So, you know, it's people love racing, getting out there, competing against each other, and having the social side of a team. So it's obviously a format that works, and great to see so many people out there. As we see an AHDR team here coming through, just 4 riders. They're just coming through this really tough section of the course, and then they take a hard right. And I would say almost when you hit that hard right, that's where we saw Beast Mode earlier. You just go all in. It's you just go all into the line. You've got about 200 to 300 meters from there. Just get on wheels, get your sprinters at the front, and gain any precious seconds that you can.
So and, we've just gone over to the Zwift HQ Ravens here. They are going to take the win in that category. So they've just crossed the line. Moncada from WMZ1. We've seen a lot of teams with 4. We're seeing a bit of a break up here of 5. And again, the overtake. Even overtaking 5 riders is difficult. So we're looking at left of screen, we're looking at Div 1, and right of screen, we're looking at Div 2 in the Bs here. So they are both B categories, but spread across the different divisions there. So both of them approaching the finish line. They're pretty fast times, all in all. Around the mid-30s is pretty cracking for 24 kilometres.
Yeah, that's doing very well. I mean, and that's probably holding on average about 43.5 to 44k an hour to be hitting that 33 mark. So they've been riding very fast through this course. It'd be good. Maybe I'll do it on a bit of a deep dive analysis, but what is the best way to sort of split this kind of a ride? You know, do you want to have heaps of momentum in the flat parts and then just hold on for dear life in those rolling parts? That's a great sprint here. Sorry, from Hua here. Amazing. Lost the rest of his team, but good solo sprint. Maybe that's our hero performance of the day.
Oh, you're brutal sometimes, Anna, I tell you. But you do make a very good point. Look at the top right of screen at all those squiggles. It kind of, I don't know if you had Mr. Squiggle in New Zealand, but if not, it's a puppet with a pencil for a nose. And Mr. Squiggle used to draw those kinds of pictures when he was trying to draw straight lines. It's the kind of road that makes you feel a little bit nauseous, both riding it and watching it. And sometimes I think you can get a bit lost in the curves rather than just focusing on riding straight. We're looking at right here from the AHDR choppers. He's had a little bit of an acceleration, maybe a bit of a hero move there, Anna, but his team coming up quite nicely together toward the finish.
Yeah, that's a good finish for AHDR choppers. 5 riders coming in there. Not sure if they started with 6, but that's nice and strong. They're looking good coming into the end. And yeah, like you're saying about those squiggly lines and that part of the course, I am actually liking the camera angles we've got going on.